Well, welcome back, YouTubers. We are on part 3 of this 2009 Subaru Forester. We got the engine pulled out in video 2, tore it apart in video 2, and now you can see I have parts everywhere. And now we are starting to assemble the engine. I did get another crank, used crank, and some pistons. The pistons that they sent me with it will work, but the connecting rods are a little different. See that? Kind of got a little bit of a inward shape to the top, while my original ones are just straight up and down. We're going to use them, and in my second video I said that one of my crank bearings right here had chewed into the connecting rod. Well, it turned out I can use all my connecting rods on my old engine that I tore apart. It was just a bearing that had gotten chewed up really bad, and I thought it had gotten down into the connecting rod, but measured it and everything's okay, so luckily I didn't have to use these. So I'm not sure what they said this was out of, but the crank did work, but this was a little different. These pistons here, these are things you gotta be aware of. You can see they're oddly shaped there, so I'll show you mine here in a minute. But anyway, we're putting everything together. I got the crank and all 4 pistons for $100. Actually $200, free shipping on eBay off some guy and all that. So we're putting this back together. And if you missed part 2 and 3, if you haven't watched it, and I'm not going to. I'm actually recording this on an old camera, an old hard drive camera. I don't even care what camera I record this on right now, because my last 2 videos did not get any views, hardly at all. Nobody cares about this stuff apparently, so it's not really worth my time doing a step-by-step tutorial. So hopefully maybe if you're wanting to know how to do this will give you some idea what you got to get into with this 2.5 non-turbo single engine overhead cam engine work. So here's the old bearings of the old engine. They were mostly pretty good, except 2 of the crank bearings. They were completely spun, and of course we got a brand new oil pump we're going to put in and all that. So that is that. So let's go in the other room here. Alright, so here we are in the other room. All the parts and plastic gauge and all that, and some tools. And there is a look at the old crank. Like I said, it was pretty much shot. You can see it spun, that bearing there on the crank, and that one there. So could not use it. And here was actually one of the bearings that I pulled off of that crank right there. As my cat makes his debut. Well, he's pretty old. He's about 18, almost 20 years old. So anyway, here is the new crank that we got, and I had to polish it up. The one journal right there, I think you can kind of see that right here. I had to clean that one up a little bit, but they measured out okay and all that. And there are the 2 halves of the engine. And just so you know, I'm not going to do a complete step-by-step tutorial. I think YouTube's algorithm is broken. There are some guys that will post a video on just basic engine work and it'll get 40, 50,000 views in 3 or 4 days. I'll be lucky if the thing gets 500 views, so I don't know what's going on. So that's why I'm not spending a whole lot of time in filming this and how I'm going to put it together. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube about this engine, so this is just how I'm doing it. So what I did plastic gauge, whatever you want to call it. Some people pronounce it differently. And I did all my clearances, and I think you can see right there. I did it on both sides of the crank. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. If I move this, here are all my readings. The rods, 3000s, main 3000s, and the top of the crank, crank bearings, I did 2, but on the bottom I did all 3. And you can see some of the marks still left. I ran out of plastic gauge, but at least I did all the bottom ones. Then I had a couple pieces left over, and just for the heck of it, I did it on the top, just in a couple spots. I wanted to see where we stood with that. And turn it around here, and you can see there is light there. Let me see if I can get that just about right there. You can kind of see the mark right there. That is 3000s, and the front one right there is about 3000. So I'm really happy with the clearances. Some guys will like them a lot more, 5 to 10,000s, but I don't like them like that. because if you drive it 10 or 15, 20,000 miles, these bearings are going to wear down just a tiny bit, and when you go to start it up, you're going to have a little bit of an engine rattle, so you got to be careful about that. So I like these a little tight, and from all the forums I read, that's perfectly okay. I'm within pretty much spec. So got new bearings. These were 150 bucks. Kind of hard to find, but they're all in. One other quick thing here, when you're putting these in, you got a wide one here, a wide one here on the main, and a wide one back here in the back. And this is the thrust bearing, kind of a deal. And then you have a smaller one here and a smaller one here, because I was putting this together and it wouldn't come together. Turned out I had one of these wide ones over here, so gotta be careful about that. Same here, you know, thrust bearing, kind of a bearing that fits perfectly in the case, and this one's kind of wide. Same here and here. So just so you know, it's easy to get these mixed up, but if you look at them, if you see this one here, it'll be out wider. It'll be wider than the case and all that. And I just got to replace a couple O-rings here, and we can bolt this back together. So that's where I'm at right now. I got all my bolts there. I've got 400 grit sandpaper. I wet sanded the crank down as best I could. And here was the one that was kind of scratched just a little bit. And I've got it pretty daggone polished. It's tiny little pits there, but it should be okay. Compared to that, yeah. And that crank should fit right in there. Shouldn't have no problems. Actually, I've already had it in there. I put all this together, torqued it down, then tore it back apart. It's a little time consuming just to see what these numbers were on the mains and everything. It was well worth it, so I'm very happy with that. And you're asking about the connecting rods. Well, they all came out at 3,000s too. There is plastic gauge. Every one of them came out the same way, and I've got them numbered too, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I know how they were when I measured them when I put in the case. So that is that. What I got to do now is go ahead and put some connecting rods on this crank. Go ahead and torque them down. Get some assembly lube put on here, and go ahead and start putting this back together. So it wasn't too bad of a job. Just a little time consuming if you want to check out and see what your clearances are here on these bearings. Oh, and one other quick thing I almost forgot to mention. There's the oil pump, the old one. There's the brand new one in the box, a high volume oil pump. I think it was like 50 bucks. And there's our head gasket set, all the gaskets and stuff I will need to assemble this engine together. So I've got about $400 just in parts just to rebuild this engine, but it'll be well worth it. You can't find these engines. If you can, they're $400 or $500, and they got almost 200,000 miles on it. And you might get into a situation like I get into. These things like to spin bearings a lot because people run them out of oil. It doesn't take much. So got all the parts I need. Alright, I did misspeak out in the garage when I said that the pistons would work. The pistons won't work either. The ones they sent me those crank rods and pistons. I'm not sure what they're out of, but the bearings were okay. The size down here. These are my old rods, and you can see how they are kind of like that. They're nice and square. So the other ones had kind of a upward tapered cut in them. I'm not sure what they were out of, but these here are my old connecting rods. And we're going to use my old pistons. We're just going to clean them up. They're perfectly okay for this engine block. So I didn't misspeak out there. So the pistons and the rods I cannot use on this block. I'll have to use my original stuff here that I had when I first tore it apart. Alright, before we marry these two cases together, I did want to show you what I was talking about. You know, to understand Subaru, you'd have to buy a book about 2 inches thick with about 1,000 pages. Now here is my original piston. And you see we've got the little tapered in the top here for the valves and all that. And on the bottom, it's nice and square where that connecting rod goes in. The one they sent me, well, you can see how that piston there is kind of tapered to the end. But the top is okay, and it looks like a valve hit that there. So there's so many variations on these Subaru engines. You've got almost to be an engine expert to understand these through Subaru's eyes. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. So when you're ordering parts, fixing your Subaru engine, boy, be really careful about the parts. The best advice I can give you is go online, do a lot of Googling, and buy maybe a couple books on Subaru and all that. If you're really in love with your Subaru, which I am not, I just want to get this thing together and move on with my life. Alright, so the beat goes on, and now I've got the crank in there, and everything seems to be pretty good. It took me a while to get all that in there. I just got to take your time at it. So what I got to do now is go ahead and get this half of the case. I got to go ahead and get some silicone on here and start putting that together and molding it together. So, you know, it's basically going to be put together, not to go to another 200,000 miles. It might go another 100,000 miles, but it's just to get it back on the road and to make it drivable again. Nothing more than that. And boom, just like that, we got the halves together. I got the main bolts in right now on each side, and I'm letting this silicone here kind of dry. It all squeezed out all the way around. Looks pretty good. Everything seems to be aligned. Really pretty simple to put together. And now what I'm going to do is let this kind of sit overnight and let this dry just a little bit more of the silicone in there, and then go ahead and start putting the pistons back in and getting everything together. So everything turns pretty freely. I can put a thumb wrench here and turn that, so that's good. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully by putting $400 into this engine, we'll have another nice car for backup, or maybe someone that wants to buy it. Okay kids, we're moving right along. Here's my first piston. I got it all cleaned up and everything, pulled the rings off. This bottom control oil ring, well, that was a different story. I literally had to take my screwdriver when I had this off and clean out every groove all the way around. It took about 20 minutes, but it's nice and clean, soaked it in gasoline. And also one other thing here, you see this little gap right here? Well, that top control oil ring has a little place where it's bent like up. That actually goes up in here in this hole and it gets caught in there. The bottom oil control ring, well, it's just a standard ring. You just slide on the bottom here. But this top one here, don't get these, you know, backwards, because if you put this top one down here on the bottom somewhere, you're going to have to figure out, well, you messed up. You could put them over here where these three gaps are, but when I took it off, it was actually like that. Only the top one has that little place on that ring there where it's kind of bent up. Now your two top rings here, don't worry about them. Just you know, stagger them on there and you're good. And I'm ready to put this on here, and this was number 1. And this one will go on this side here. And I've already got my pin. Don't forget to put your little clip on the inside here. And that'll go like that. And I'll put my rod, my pin in here like that. Then put the clip on the other side, on this side. So make sure you put that in first before you stick the piston in. So pretty, you know, elementary stuff. But just wanted to kind of touch base here on this oil control, the oil control ring here, where that has a slight little bend right there. So just so you know. All right, so this was kind of bugging me. I know I want to show you this real quick, but see that right there? That little place on that control ring right there where it's bent up, that goes right there in that little hole. Just like that. There you go. So now you know, the more you know. Alright, just a little tip here. Now I had 2 of the pistons in on this side, and I was cleaning up the other 2 for the other side when I realized right here where this control oil ring is, you see those little 3 slots? Well, on the inside there's 3 holes on each side of that. I forgot to clean these too, so I had to pull these back off, and go ahead and clean these out. And now you can almost, you can see through there now. See the light shining through there, right there, all the way through there. Because if you don't, that oil on the wall will not get scraped off by these oil rings and get put back down the engine. So I just took a little nail like this and stuck it on here like that and kind of tapped it through there, and that's basically how I clean these out. So make sure you clean all these out, and also I want to verify, make sure you clean these gaps out, these grooves really good. So, you know, just so you know. So now I've got to put it all back together, so at least everything here is clean with the pistons and everything. Once I get the pistons and the pins back, and then we go ahead and start putting everything else back together. But just make sure, you know, your oil holes are clean on both sides when you're cleaning up all your rings and stuff and all that. And you can see there, you got all the oil and stuff off and all that. And just so you know, in order to clean these gaps out, I'm just using a broken ring from another old piston to get down in there and go all the way around on these grooves. Make sure they are nice and clean. Or you can, like I said earlier, you can just use a big feeler gauge and go around there and make sure all that's clean before you put it all back together. And while you're at it, if you really want, you can go ahead and measure your gap in your ring there. And you can see that there looks really good. I've already measured it. It's right where it should be, so you might want to take one of the rings off on each piston and just verify, you know, that it's okay. So, good deal. And just like that, the rear main seal is in. That was my Forrest Gump impression. Do yourself a favor, don't throw away all your old seals. Put that one on the back side, the old one, and you can tap the new one in. That's one way you can do that. And we got this plate on. Everything in the back here is done, and we're done back here, so now we'll go ahead and start putting some stuff on the front. We got all the cylinders in, everything is good, it turns freely, no issues. And just like that, we got our oil pump on, we got all 7 bolts in. Now this is a brand new one, this is a high volume oil pump, or what they call high flow. It was about 50 bucks for this. Now, they give you this little wedge thing here. I kind of wonder what this was about. A little thing right there. It actually goes right here. I guess it keeps the dirt out. You got to push that down in there like that. Once it goes in there, I'll tap that in a second. And I did prime it just with a little bit of oil. And here's the old oil pump. And really, the only area you got to be concerned is right here. Get some new silicone in there. But I did it all the way around because the old one was like that. And there's a little O-ring that goes there. Don't forget to put that in behind the oil pump. So that's right about there. So this is the old one. So that is in. And they do give you new bolts and all that. So, boy, we don't have too much here left to do. I did go ahead and bolt the water pump on. It's in great shape. There's nothing wrong with that. So, and you do, well, at least with this oil pump, I did get a new seal with it. So that's kind of nice. And it's nice and flush. Alrighty. Hey, let me know where you're watching from right now. Okay, so the driver's side head is done. I got all new valve seats in it and everything. Not seat seals. And there's some of the old ones. And got those all in. Real easy to do. I just took a screwdriver and pushed on each side of these little seals. And they'll slide right down on there. You don't need a special tool or anything. I got all those on there. And on this side here, well, on this back rail right here, you got these 4 bolts. I took all this off. I'll show you on this head here in a second. But getting this back on can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. You got to get this lined up just right. This spring here has a little tension on it. Once you turn that, then you can start these bolts in there. You got to kind of take your time at it. On the back here, there's some guide pins. You got to watch those don't kind of get slid out. But let me show you on this head here. There is what I've taken off. And you can see on the back here, you got this spring. You have to kind of flip this up and kind of play around with that. So you're probably going to cringe a little bit if you're going to take this off and try to put it back on. This side's easy. Just got the bolts there. You just take off and all that. Now, on this head here, this one here had a tick to it. Turns out these 2 valves back here, once I pull these keepers off and everything, well, the valve guide, one of them had slipped down and the other one was almost halfway out, so I had to take my little tool. I knocked them back up in there. I don't know the story on this engine. Maybe someone ran it out of oil, I don't know, but you saw the other videos. So I just knocked the valve stem back up in there, and it was pretty hard to do. Then I had to take my press outside and kind of push that back up in there. And I put the valve back in there, and I didn't see any damage with the valve. The valve looked good and all that, so I just reassembled it. And that was the only 2 that was doing it. Everything else so far has been good. I gotta go ahead and put the seals on the back side here. I'll show you here in a second before I finish this head up. So other than that, seeing 2 valves there, valve seals, valve stems, what's early, valve stems and gotten moved. Other than that, it's alright. I don't know why they get moved like that. As a matter of fact, when I took this one here off, this seal was not even on this guide, so it was just dumping oil right down into the cylinder. Same with this one here, and you can just see how black. Down in there it is. So, yeah, this side here had the tick, so that might take care of the ticking noise. Alright, so I've got that off there. I'm going to go ahead and take my tool here, this guy here. These are lifesavers. And go ahead and pull one of these keepers off and go ahead and show you what the seals look like and all that. And then we'll go ahead and wrap this head up. But yeah, you might cringe a little bit trying to get this back on. It's doable. You just got to take your time at it and also verify that all these little pieces here, these things are on there like they should be. I found this one off. I pushed it back on. So there's these little guys here. You got to make sure they stay in. So all right, let me go ahead and get these keepers off. Alright, we'll go ahead and get these keepers off. Now, one of the quick things also is I don't have time to go out and find another head. Where I live, it's impossible to get parts, and it'd take 2 weeks to get another head. And I didn't see anything wrong with those valve guides, so I just pushed them back up in there. We'll hope for the best. If it starts ticking again, then I'll know it's this one over here doing it. But I think it'll be okay. I've done that before in the past, and it seems like they hold. Sometimes these heads, people let them get really, really hot, and they'll drop a valve guide. So maybe that's what happened, but I didn't see anything wrong with it. It looked good and it measured okay, so that's that. Alright, so let's go ahead and get these keepers off. Alright, we'll go ahead and get these keepers out. And I use a little magnet like this. Helps them to grab them. And now we go ahead and take this guy off. We'll check these valve stems out. Valve guides. Let's see how bad these are. Alright, so there is that. Spring looks good, and down there is the valve seal. I just usually take something like hair pliers or something, just grab them. They come off really easy. Just barely grab them and pull them up. And there's that one. See, they're not very big, and of course this valve guide, it's okay. It's down in there okay. So also you can look in here and see that it's okay. So not sure why the other head had two of them kind of moved a little bit, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. You can go ahead and just slide this valve clear out and double check, make sure there's no places on it that's burnt. This is how I'm basically doing it. So hundreds of videos on YouTube on this subject. So let me go ahead and change out these valve seals, and when I go to put them in, I just take a screwdriver, and these new ones here, they're so small. You just put a little pressure on each side of this and just kind of push it down on there. It doesn't go on there very far, maybe a quarter of an inch. So just take your time at it and go on. You can use a screwdriver or whatever you want. Just be careful and don't tear them, you know. But let me go ahead and get this side in. I'll check all these valve guides, make sure they're okay. And these heads will be done. Alright, well, my last one. What a pain in the ass to get a couple keepers on. Took me literally 15 minutes to get those two keepers on. And we are done. Our head has brand new valve seals in it. And I didn't see any guides on this one here. Well, at least the rest of the guides, I didn't see any issues with it. So there is that. So all we got to do is go ahead and bolt all this back on, and we should be good to go. Like I said earlier, just be careful when you're putting this on. Make sure you get it on there right. Take some pictures before you pull it apart. And there is all 8 of my old seals. Go back and count and make sure you have 8. That way you know you've got them all and you know didn't miss anything. This head is done. Two quick things. I found out, you see this little slide thing right here? It's like a little keeper. You got one here and here. If you just release this tensionless, this releases spring. It makes this side a lot easier to go back on. And when you get it back on, just take a screwdriver, put it in behind here and grab it and flip it back up where it should be, like this. If I can do it on camera for you guys. There we go. Just like that. Let me zoom in on it. In case you're watching this in the year 2050, after I'm long gone, and hopefully there's still some gasoline vehicles on the road. And that is done there. So, and there's one other thing here on, like right down in here. Let me see if I think you can kind of see that. You see there's little shiny things. There's caps. There's little springs behind there. You gotta watch. Those will fall out. I had one fall out. Had to put it back in. You have to fiddle around and get this aligned. So other than that, these heads are done. I'm going to clean them up a little bit. and we'll bolt them on to the engine. Alright, so got all the heads on. Pretty easy to do. You just got to kind of take your time at it. Got it back in time. I got the marks exactly like they were in the previous video. Of course, I've rotated it 2 times. And all the marks line up exactly where they should. Even got my new oil pump there on, I believe, in my last video. And I've gone ahead and put some silicone around these plugs here to get into the wrist pins, and one down here. Now, the only thing I'm kind of worried about is this guy here. I pushed it back down in, and it says 60 pounds. You should be able to push this in. So I did. I reset it, put it back in. Belt seems tight, but when I push down on the belt there a little bit, a little slack there, and this is not going back in, although I can understand why there's a lot of pressure on there. So if I turn this the way the engine rotates, then everything's tight. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. I may run it a while, and I may go ahead and just replace this tensioner anyway. The belt's like brand new, so it was replaced not long ago. All I have to do now is put on the flex plate, which is in the back, put the oil pan here on, and I've already got it. I don't know if I can flip this around. Maybe I can just go around the back here. Tell you what, let me just flip this over on its back here real quick. And as you can see here, we've got the oil suction screen on. Tube, we got this plate here. And there is the oil pan. And it's all cleaned up. And it's kind of cold in the garage, so I'm going to have to put a bead of silicone on here and let it dry a little bit. Then put this together. Other than that, it's going pretty good. Just be careful of those sensors on this one side. They stick up when you're rotating this back and forth. You can snap one of the sensors off, so you got to be real careful. Best thing to have is actually an engine stand, but I don't have any room in here, so maybe, well, I don't know, I might have enough room in here. Maybe someday I'll get one. So that's all we got to do here. Then, like I said, the flex plate, we bolt it on in the back here. I don't think you're going to be able to see it back here. And we got our new seal on, and I'm going to take this plug right here. Well, this is, I don't have to do anything here. That plug is behind this. That's got to be the silicone there. This one's already got silicone there, so we're good back here. So all we got to do is put the flex plate on, and like I said, put the oil pan on, and get ready to drop this back in. Got our covers there. I'll put those on last. So it's going. It's going slowly, but it's going. Alright, so there's our nice thick silicone bead all the way around. This is stuff you want to take your time at. That's probably a little more than a 1/16. That's probably closer to an eighth inch thick. That's what you want on this oil pan. They do make a gasket, but I didn't get it with the kit. But a lot of guys just do this, seal up the pan, because it's not a very big pan. But nevertheless, you don't want it to leak. Alright, we'll let that set up and put the oil pan on. Alright, just like that. Oil pan's on. And now the next thing I want to do is go ahead and either put the flywheel on the back. And I got one valve here, adjuster. I think I have this one I need to adjust just a little bit. You see, it's a little loose. Hear that? But everybody else is okay here. So that one might need just a little bit, but just those. Put our valve pan covers on, and flywheel. So let's get that done. Alright everyone, I've got it on its oil pan sitting in like it would be in the vehicle. Now one thing I was almost going to do, I was going to go out and buy one of these new tensioners because I thought this one was busted and something was wrong with it on the inside. Wouldn't hold pressure. Well, the key is you got to make sure you got it in the upright position like this. You see there's the pin where it goes across the case. By the way, this has the updated bracket for this. It has the, there was, I guess in 2005 they changed a lot of things. But this has the newer bracket on it, which is nice. This is 2009. If this pin hydraulic tensioner seems really flimsy and you got to put it in a little C-clamp to press it down, and you got it upside down, it's not going to work. You have to make sure that it's up like that. Once you do that, the fluid will get down to the bottom of the cylinder here and will actually start working. Before, I could push this belt back and it would stay and it wouldn't take the tension out. Now, since I've got the engine up in the upright position, I can now take this belt and I can't move it. It's tight. There's a lot of pressure on that now. So just make sure when you're squeezing this back in, that pin, and you got to make me a drill bit in here or something to hold it. You got to push that in real slow. Do it a few times. Release it. And I was actually using something up here like this in my garage. Some vise, C-clamps, and kind of squeezing it back in. And once you do that, it'll get it all the way back down, and you can put a drill bit in there or something and hold that. But I did it about 3 times and it worked. Then I put it back on the engine and it was upside down, then it quit working again. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So I flipped the old engine back over the way it's supposed to be, put it back in. But before I put it back in, I had pressure. Now it's holding. So just so you know, sometimes you don't have to go out and buy these. But if you want to go out and buy a new one, just for peace of mind, hey, go for it. Just so you know. Alright everyone, I just wanted to verify that my timing was correct. It just, sometimes, you know, these things I get a little slow at because I want to take my time and make sure they're done right. That way, if there's a catastrophic failure here, I know this is done right. And there were my previous marks. And this is something I can go back and look at my own videos and check and make sure I did things right. So we are good. I squeezed this guy here down, and now all I got to do is take these needle nose here and pull this pin out. Hold the camera here for you guys. This little guy here, this is actually a drill bit, and we'll pull this out. This will release the tension. This thing's working good now. It's got all kind of pressure on it. There we go. Just about got it here. There we go. And we'll release that, and we know this timing is in perfect time, just like I took it apart. And it ran great before I took it apart. Go back and look up some other videos. We just had a loud knock. Now we can go ahead and get this thing together and get ready to put it in. Alright, so we're rolling right along. Got my side over there done. Valve cover. And I'm doing this side now. I got the spark plug seals. Got brand new gasket. Got my bolts ready here. And we'll go ahead and stick this on, and we got the flywheel on the back. I put some thread locker on that back there. I think you can kind of see. It's kind of dark, but that's all done. We get this side here on, and really the only thing we got to do is go ahead and get it up in the air. And I might go ahead and put my cover on here. I'll probably do it while it's off, where it's easy to get into those bolts. And we'll call this job here almost done. Then we're going to start sticking it in the vehicle. But, yep, we've got all new gaskets and stuff here. And like I said, this is just kind of for me to go back and look at the video. And unless something, you know, major happens and I want to kind of go back and look at things. So, hey, how many of you right now are laying in bed on your laptop watching this, trying to figure out your Subaru? Huh? Comment in the section below. Alright, let's keep on rolling here. Alright everyone, she's about ready to be dropped back in. It's all together, got the cover on the front, pulleys. Don't forget to put your dipstick in, okay? Because you will kick yourself, because it's kind of hard to put in once you get the motor back in. One little bolt there, holds that on there. That's all that is. And double checked everything. She turns freely. And I got my mark here on my flywheel where the paint was originally. Where it's up. On my torque converter, so it should line up fairly well. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get it on the engine hoist and start putting it in. So here we go. Alright, me and my little garage. What I'm going to do, the same way I took it out, I'm going to leave this transmission up. I got a jack under there with a block of wood. The higher that is a little bit, you can really get these 2 long bolts here kind of started in the bottom. That makes it a lot easier. So we are taking it up. My chain is not exactly... Well, I actually wanted it like this, but I can spin that around. And that's how I'll be doing it, folks. Alright, we're in. But I'll tell you what, there's long bolts though. If you can see those or not. Right? Let's see where they are. Right there. Going through there. Well, they make a big difference and help you getting that engine started in there. So it's pretty much down in there. On this side it looks pretty good, and all I gotta do is push it back. It's even there with the dial pin. Really all I gotta do is push it back a little bit more here and start a bolt on it. So a lot of clearance here when you got some of the stuff out of the way, but boy, I'm happy this is in. And I even got my torque converter bolt here lined up with the white paint. I think you can see here. Make sure you do this, make sure it's lined up because it'll save you a lot of grief. It's pretty much right where I want it. So there we go. All right, we'll start some bolts here, and hopefully we'll get this thing running soon and start it up on its first start. If the motor's in, all right, so I got all the bolts in the flywheel and the bell housing, except one bolt right below the starter. You see this right there? I have pulled with this a half hour and it won't go in. I can't figure out why. Well, after coming back out today and looking again and realizing, well, you basically have to put that bolt in before you put the starter on. Yeah. You're probably not going to see this on YouTube anywhere. So, there's our bolt. We're going to pull the starter back out of the way because that bolt there will not go all the way because it hits the side of that starter. And I was hitting it and I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't go in. This bolt, you got to pretty much put it in first, right below the starter. But although there is a secondary smaller bolt that actually holds the starter on, this is just a bell housing bolt right here that I've been having trouble getting in. Now I can screw it in. Boy, things you learn on these Subarus. There we go. I must have sit here for a half hour trying to get that bolt in there, all because I didn't put that starter in last. Now we put the starter in, and the bolt that holds the starter on is just a little nut and a washer here, and there's a little stud that sticks out. Let me see if I can get the camera in there. Right about there. I don't know if you can see my finger there. Right there. There's a little stud that sticks out. Try this light. Maybe I can show you this way. There you go. See that stud right there? That's what actually is in the bell housing. So now we're going to put the starter on, and all the bolts in the bell housing and the flywheel are done. And even the motor mount on the bottom, which is pretty simple. Alright guys, so I'm rolling right along, putting everything together, and then I got to the almost end here, and I'm thinking, I got a tube here that I did not install first. You have to install this first before you do that, any other stuff. It actually bolts on the top of this block. This is a water hose that goes across the top of the engine and goes down behind this timing gear here. So do yourself a favor, put this on first because there's two little bolts there, one there and one there. There's a hole right there, and there's a hole right back there. In order to get this on, you have to take this intake and you have to take this crossover tube off for the water here. So don't make my mistake, don't get in a hurry and forget this tube. So yeah, there you go. Now you know. Update, we got everything hooked up here, 95%. We're now putting the radiator in, and don't forget that little plug. There's a seal there on the bottom of this radiator. If you lose that little seal of that plug, you're going to be in trouble, and this thing here is hard to find, especially at the parts store. So we're going to stick this radiator in. And the only other issue I had was the manifold bolts. Those 3 bolts on this side, 3 on that side, that bolt up in the head. You really got to make sure you get those bolts straight into the aluminum, because if you don't, they get cross-threaded and you get into a nightmare. So you really got to take your time at that. So we're going to get this radiator in here, and we're just about ready to do our first start after we put some oil in them. Alright everyone, it's a new day, and after about 2 hours worth of work last night, all because I forgot to plug in a harness over here. I actually plugged it in, but I didn't move the lever inward and lock it. I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't start last night, and that's all it was. I thought the starter went bad, but I got it running, and you can hear it idling. Got a little bit of an exhaust leak, but it's running. Got good oil pressure. See it idling there on this side. Idling pretty nicely, and I think I got maybe 1 check engine light that was on earlier. That's for my fuel cap. Actually, I don't even have a check engine light on it. It went off. So, but I do need a fuel cap. It is off, but it is running. Now, if I would have done anything differently, I probably would have. Next time, I'm probably going to buy a reman crank with the bearings with it instead of trying to mix match bearings and trying to buy a used crank. But it may run for a while and get me down the road and last a little while. I think later this summer, since this engine is pretty easy to pull out, since I know the ropes, I may actually look for a really good engine, or maybe get a rebuilt engine and put in, because the vehicle it's in really good shape, and I think it's really worth keeping. So I just wanted to shoot this little clip here, show you guys that I did get it running. I cranked on it for a while, pulled the fuse out of the fuel pump here, cranked on it and let the oil get through the engine. Then I put the fuse back in, and after about 5 minutes I had a plug wire over here that was backwards. I got it running, but I wanted to show you how these plug wires go on this in this coil, because it's kind of hard to find this information online. I had a little trouble because one of my wires was backwards. It's kind of hard to figure out how Subaru does it, because it's hard to find manuals online. If you do, they're not very in-depth. So on the front side, on the driver's side here, the wire on the front of the engine here with the cylinder, this wire goes all the way on the top on the coil on this side, and on the bottom on this side of the coil, the wire goes all the way to the second cylinder in the back here. So that's how that is. And on this side, the cylinder up front with the plug wire here, it goes on top. And on the bottom, the wire goes to the back cylinder in the back. So just so you know, hopefully that'll help you out. Make sure you have your wires on right when you go to start it up, because if you don't, it's going to pop, bang, bang, and make a little bit of noise. And doesn't smoke. And in the back you can see the exhaust. No missing. You know, like I said, just wanted to fix it, get it on the road a little bit, and we'll see how good it goes. But transmission does shift. I had it up in the wheels, on all 4 wheels last night, and I put it in gear, and all the transmission gears are there. It does shift through all the gears, no problem. So I'm happy it's done. And not the best sounding engine, but hey, you know, for a little more money I got into it. I still got a lot of good used parts here. So that's it, guys, for the video. Thanks for watching part 3 and all that. Until my next video, I'll see you later.